live, I presume. This is episode 2 of the Seduction show. I am Hans Comijn, your host, and today, as usual, I'm with Anthony, who's in the background taking care of all the technological details. And today, sitting next to me here in the studio in Nicaragua, this is the second time I say Nicaragua, in Ecuador, is Michael Skye, my ally and travel partner, business partner, and I wanted him to bring on the show, both because I wanted to see how it is to feel that energy with someone else there, and also because the topic of today, he has a great input for that, and so he's here. And what we're going to do today is what I want to do on a more regular basis: is do a case. That means someone will come on, present a situation where he's at with women. We'll make an assessment and then also tell him what is next, what to focus on next. And today's case will be Anthony. So Anthony, how you been?
Hello. So I did the mission. I felt super weird about it at first because, like I would be talking to a girl and then your voice would come on to my head and say, and whisper, "You got you spanking at this moment right now." And then I tried to find a way to kind of weave it into the conversation. Because I live in Davis and there's a lot of cows. And then in one conversation, I was like, you know what? Those cows, they need a spanking. They're the worst. Or I'd intentionally say something stupid and say, actually, I didn't mean that. Please don't spank me now. Something like that.
Right.
But yeah, my brain was freaking out the whole time every time I said it because I was like, oh my God, how will they react?
Actually, the spanking mission began after Michael and I were in Africa, and I saw him do that actually constantly with women. Not just saying you need spanking, but actually threatening them to spank. And so it's a great way to to make things sexual and see if she's willing to play along. And it's one we'll get back to it. We'll go right into the assessment. Now, what I would like to do with you today, Anthony, is show the 3 ways that I'm currently thinking of transformation in someone who's committed to become better with women. And we'll go over an assessment in a left brain kind of way, which is very sequential and very methodological, very masculine. And then we'll add to that the power of more of a right brain indoctrination, so to speak. So and that will help you with your challenges and missions, you see. And then I'll give also a shortcut in the end, a 3rd way that will help you transform and help you get women the dignified way, because this is what the podcast is about. Seduction show is about getting women the dignified way. It's we're dealing with questions on meeting, dating, and relating to women. So everybody, welcome. Also, I see a lot of people coming in. If you have questions, please put them in the comment section, and if they're interesting, we'll deal with them. Remind or be reminded that we want experience-based questions. So if you want, please describe your situation and then your question, and really real life experiences only. No armchair philosophy and no theorizing. Michael, go ahead. Also, I see a lot of
people. Hans, I'm not sure why you had me on here, if this is about the dignified way to getting women.
I do feel that we have a bit of maybe the best way to talk is like this. So I don't, so because I do hear the echo as well. Anything else, Michael, before we get into it? Okay. You share the mics maybe. All right. Let's try to do that. This is a 2nd episode, so we're still getting by the technological difficulties, but this should work maybe. All right. let's continue. Anthony, so you're a very young man at the beginning of your journey through the land of women. And in the last couple of weeks, I sent to, via my newsletter, also via my Facebook page, I sent 8 sticking points, but also keys of getting better with women the dignified ways. Because in my journey helping men in this, I've seen that there are mainly 8 sticking points or points of leverage, points where the guys have trouble, and they're both where they get stuck, but there's also where the key is to getting a lot better. And the 8 are well, you've read them already, but I'm going to ask you the questions, Anthony, and you tell me whether it is a yes or a no. Okay? And then we know we can move on to the next point.
Okay.
You ready for that?
Yes, I am.
All right. So the first one is preparation. And the question we ask is, do you find yourself often enough in the company of women you fancy?
I'd say yes. Very much so.
What's your situation?
So I'm at university. So every time I walk outside and there's a bunch of girls. I walk into the middle campus. There's a bunch of girls, very pretty girls, by the way. I go to the club to dance and dance bachata. That's what I've been getting into lately, and bunch of very attractive girls. So
more than enough. So that's a yes. And when you're listening to this, guys, you will notice that they're más o menos, more or less sequential, which means if one is no longer a sticking point, it's usually the next one. And so we'll move up the ladder, and 2 is showing up. And the question I ask is, are you taking enough action when you see a woman that fascinates you?
I think I definitely was at the beginning. Now I'm slowing down a lot.
The stories I heard from you is that you're an approach machine, a maniac, you know?
Yeah, and I kind of realized how, like it's so exhausting after a while, because you just go nonstop and you just exhaust yourself. So at this moment, I'm like slowed down a lot, but I'd say like when I feel those emotions, when I feel those butterflies and that tension in my chest, I have to like swerve by.
Great.
If that's it, I mean, if that's all I can do, just swerving by, then that's it.
Swerving by, for people that are new, is my method of approaching women for guys who don't like pickup. You can find it on my website if you're interested in that. I got a book and I got a crash course all for free, so you can find it on my website. So that's a yes. So point 3 is, are you able, is presence, and the question is, are you able to be in the moment when you meet a woman that fascinates you?
Now this is like the hardest part, because there are definitely times in which I am present.
Yes.
But I'd say that there are even more times in which I am not. There are more times in which I am in my head and get self-conscious and beat myself up, you know?
Tell me more about what's going on in those moments.
Oh, like I was in, like yesterday I was talking to a girl. She was very receptive to me. And so like I've been really busy for the last couple of days and really exhausted, and in that moment, like these words just kept coming out of my or this voice just kept coming, kept speaking in my head saying, "Oh, you're in your head now." And it just kept talking like, "Oh, you're in your head. She's receptive. You're in your head. You're about to screw it up." And then right when I said that, I could feel like my body close, like kind of, just close in. And I was like, oh my gosh, I gotta like pump up my chest right now because I'm in my head. And normally when that happens, like my brain kind of spirals out of control, and then I just dip, I just eject as fast as possible before anything else happens. Yeah.
Yes. I think it's very, I let you speak the whole thing. I think it's very recognizable for a lot of guys, if their preparation is okay. And for a lot of guys, it's not. They don't really think about preparation. They think when getting better with women, they think a lot about the interaction itself, when there's so much to be gained from preparing well and getting the logistics in order. But if that's okay, and if they're showing up, which is a big sticking point for a lot of guys, when they see a woman they really fancy, they get stuck and they are unable to move, and so they are not showing up. They're not men of action. But if they are that, then presence is usually the next one. And it seems that that's a bit of an issue for you. Let me do the next ones also, just to see if there's more there, because usually there's a bit of an overlap. So the next one is desire. Are you expressing your desire when you talk to a woman that fascinates you?
I don't think I think that's also a work in progress. Sometimes I do when I get the reception that I know that is like basically the green light, then I just push it, like go all out, right? Express desire, flirt. But if I get kind of unreceptiveness, I don't. I play a lot safer.
That's why we give you because your question about this came last week, or the first show, and that's why I give you the assignment of saying sexy or spanking in the first couple of minutes when meeting a woman. So that's why you got that assignment. So tell me a little bit more about the assignment. You hinted upon it, but tell me a little bit more. How many women did you use spanking with and sexy with?
Probably. So I definitely did a lot in the first week, and then the second week I just did it like maybe once or twice. So probably around like 8 to 10 total. Yeah. So I went to like dance class one time, and I was talking to these two girls, and I was like, are you guys like, you guys totally look like you know what you're doing. You guys have the earrings, the dress. Like, I know that, like, I can tell you're a dancer when you're wearing those sexy earrings, something like that. Mm-hmm. And in that one, it was really interesting because it just flowed out of me. Like, I didn't really think about saying sexy or spanking. Mm-hmm. It just kind of came out. Actually, no, sexy is a lot easier for me than spanking. Spanking, I have to think about, because I'm like, oh my God, like, I don't want to offend anyone, especially, that's like kind of my limiting belief. It's like, I don't want to offend anyone by saying that.
And we talked about this yesterday also. You're in a American culture, which is where you're at least stressed to be a lot more careful about these matters, right?
Oh, definitely, and I've experienced it firsthand. So it's.
What do you mean?
So, I made like a comedy, like a stand-up comedy routine for like 5 minutes. And I was making fun of pickup and kind of me trying to, meet girls and everything. And so I performed it in front of one class, and everyone loved it. Everyone was laughing their ass off. And then I performed it in the second class, which was a lot more progressive, a lot more feminists. And they completely called me out. Said it was insensitive, said it was, rude, it was disrespectful. And the teacher agreed. And basically for the next month I was isolated, like I was alienated by everyone. And of course, like, I should have been more aware of my audience, but that really taught me that, like, at least here in California, Silicon Valley, will get condemned. If you will get condemned, people will say it's rape culture, people will say it's toxic masculinity, and label the shit out of you until like everyone just isolates you or alienates you. And that sucks.
There's a great video on YouTube where Patrice O'Neill is dealing with this governmental woman, talks about humor and putting limits on it, and in terms of like some things you cannot make jokes about and others you can. Is great. Is fantastic. Is super assertive, and he wins that clearly. And I understand the the fear and rage also, or what comes up for me is rage. If I would imagine that freedom to try to be funny is short.
So Hans and I are working out the audio here, but yeah, Anthony, when I hear that, I'm just like, oh man, I hurt for you, brother. Being in that situation, because for me, like a lot of people talk about, a lot of feminists talk about, they warn people not to like shame female sexuality, right? Like if a girl dresses sexy or something like this. But to me, it's like that's shaming male sexuality. And, as we were reading through this list here, 3 was presence, 4 was desire. I think that, maybe even if you're not fully present, you could skip straight to desire. Like if your desire is strong enough, or if you're present to your desire, then that can kind of like override everything. Like I remember, my buddy O, I was leading this weekend event up in the Rockies with O, and it was 13 women and then myself and him. And one morning I was up in the kitchen and he was standing like shoulder to shoulder with 3 women, and they were just, sharing and stuff. And next thing you know, I look over and he's motorboating all 3 of them, and I was like how is like, and they were totally enjoying it. And I was like, how is this possible? Like in my mind, it didn't even compute, because it's like, yeah, maybe someone would be offended. But the thing is, like when you do some kind of bold action like that, it depends how congruent you are, like how much you are in just your total enjoyment of the moment, of your desire and of them. People react to that more than what you're doing. So if you're doing something that you think is bold, but you're like self-conscious, you're kind of doubting yourself, then people will put you in check, because they're basically following your lead. You're showing that I'm where I shouldn't be right now, and someone needs to check me. And then they do check you, and then that's the problem. But one of the things I was going to say is just that I think it would be powerful to you to like not tolerate an environment like that. And whether that's speaking up and defending yourself and confronting them, or just leaving that situation. If you're clear that, you want to make a stand here for yourself, your desire, your self-expression, being powerful, being free, being a man, then like I would say it's worth like honoring yourself and saying, I'm not gonna tolerate their disrespect. And it's a point too that like if they feel like you're disrespecting them, okay, but neither side needs to force each other to be different, but both sides don't need to hang out together either. And so yeah, just hearing that's what came up for me.
Yeah, I mean, I totally agree to that. My rule here, and there's so many, like it's a very progressive school, and it's like there are a lot of feminists and LGBTQ and like all the political groups here, and my rule is like if I meet a feminist, if I find out she's a feminist, like I'm running the other direction. Like I'm not gonna really engage with that, because it's really, really hard to be myself, I think, fully and express my sexuality around people who are not willing to be open-minded to that, and immediately just condemn that.
Well, that's I think short term that is indeed there's only so much strength you have, and you got to choose your battles, And long term, as your power grows, as your self-expression grows, you'll be able more and more to deal with those situations. I sit with many feminists, and I completely get what they're coming from, and I read the early feminists like Simone de Beauvoir, and it's fantastic writing. I love it. I think it's great, and I also feel I have the strength to sit with any woman, and after 5 minutes she'll understand what we're about and agree and think it's the greatest thing, But short term, you got to indeed choose your battles, Once you're ready for it, you'll have more strength, more love long term, and that's a great playground also, to test where you're at, to go in those dirtier, choppier waters, and see if you can stand unwavering there as well.
I was going to add, Anthony, for me, myself, like I've studied desire for a long time with myself. I can really relate to where you're coming from, because I grew up Mormon and I grew up incredibly shy. And you're a young guy. When I was your age, I'm sure I was not as self-expressed as you are right now. But so it's been a long journey for me. But with the whole point of desire, Hans gave you that exercise, like to say sexy or spanking in the first minute or so, which is a great exercise if that's, outside of your comfort zone. But for me, a lot of times what I'm doing is I'm focused mostly like on feeling my desire, and then like I might just act from it. So I don't know how many times I say spanking, which I'm sure I say it plenty, but like I might just grab a woman by the wrist, start to turn her and lift my other hand up like she's getting the spanking, at which point she'll usually try to run away and whatever. And at that point you're just kind of playing, and you haven't said anything about spank or whatever. You've just you've basically just induced a game, a bit of play, but it can have the same effect. So yeah.
So adding to that, I'm going to give you a mission, and that's based on the assessment that we get when we sense that both presence and desire may be a sticking point, or the key also to growth. Here's what we're going to do. In terms of presence, there are many tools you can do to become more present, and I'll give you 2 of them, which you could practice starting today, and then next time we hear from each other, we'll talk about it. The first one is you could set a timer during the day, however often you want, 5 times, 10 times, whatever. And when your timer goes off, when your alarm goes off, you're going to check in with yourself. You're going to check in with yourself and say, how am I feeling right now? Try to sense your body, try to notice what's going on. And if you get into that habit, what you can do also is share that with the next person. So that's a great practice to do of getting in the habit of know what's going on with you. What you also can do, if you are in interaction with women that fascinate you and you find yourself inside your head, what you do is blurt what's inside your head. So that's your mission too. It means that it's not a problem to be inside your head if you're willing to blurt what's going on there, And the blurting of what's going on inside your head brings you instantly into the conversation again. And so when you described the situation before, when you're with these girls and you're like, damn, I'm going inside my head, and I can feel that's going on, and my body's reacting to it. Say that. Exactly. Say what you said to us, describing that situation. Say that to the girl that you're talking with. Wow, I like you, and I see I'm going inside my head, and I don't know what to say next, and I get this feeling in my stomach. Does that happen for you sometimes? You can follow me, Anthony? Where I'm going with this?
Yeah, and the inclusivity part, I think.
Yes.
That's really something I haven't tried enough.
Right. I see that you read all the parts, because the inclusivity comes later and is indeed very important. Is the leadership thing, is you share your expression, but you really make sure that she's included. So that means you either ask about her, or you ask how it make her feel, what you sharing with her. So, or you say something like I just said, does it ever happen to you? So be inclusive with that. But I think for you, a great thing would be to blurt out what's happening, what are you thinking inside your head, and bring it into the conversation, and you'll notice you'll instantly be back into the conversation with her. Does that make sense?
Yes, it does.
So here's your mission, and this is I'll remind the listeners, this is just the first of the 3 ways we're going to help you transform. And the first one is the left brain. We're going over 8 sticking points, and we've located yours, which is right now presence and desire. And so that is your mission. That is for you to focus on, is the presence mission, which is put a timer, check in with yourself, and if you want, share it with the next person. Another presence exercise is to blurt what's inside your head. And we're going to continue the desire mission, which is use the word sexy, use the word spanking in the first couple of minutes. And you heard from Michael a little bit more how you can do that very practically. Is that material you can work with?
Yes, it is.
To summarize it for us, what are you going to do?
So 2 missions. I think, first showing up. I think nothing can happen if I don't show up. I'm taking it a lot slower, so I think I might start increasing the pace again. And the first is checking in with yourself 5 times a day. And secondly, if I ever get in my head, which is I get in my head a lot, take note of that and blurt it out if I am in interaction. If not, and I'm in my head, share that with the person next to me.
Great. Good. So that's enough material. And so that's the left brain, kind of a very masculine, sequential, figuring out kind of approach to learning things. Now, this week I was talking with Michael also, and there's a video on YouTube where we explain this. He was reading my book, The Way of a Seducer, and told me, I see now how this can contribute to a completely different way of learning, which is a more right brain kind of immersion and self-indoctrination. Because what the book does is taking on the perspective of a seducer. I am a seducer. Now let's see where this way of looking at the world would take me. And so we're looking through the eyes. We're looking through the eyes of a seducer. We're looking at the world and how he moves through it, and in a very poetic way. So it's not a how-to. It's not a challenges you should meet. It's not a breaking down. It's a poetic meditation of my integrity with women. So it's a completely different approach to seduction and transforming yourself. And it is a right brain, and it is a way that has helped me very much. I identified early on with being a seducer and seeing where it would take me. I remember when I met Zan, for example, that I saw he had an incredible love for women, and I thought it was so interesting that I put on that hat. I measured it onto myself. I said, I want to explore my love for women and see how far it takes me. You know, how much do I love women? Where can I take it? You know, and that decision, that stand, changed everything. You know, it changed the way I would converse with women. It changed the way I would look at missions. It changed the way I looked at approaching women. And I've been often surprised of how hard it is for many guys to do these missions, to show up despite their fear, to start talking with women, to express their desire. And I often wonder, why is that? You know, because I don't recall having real trouble with it. It wasn't really hard to me. I enjoyed it, even if I was scared or nervous. You know, I enjoyed exploring seduction, go and talk over women, being afraid, experiment with things to say and things to do. And so Michael showed to me that I was identifying with being a seducer, and most men do not identify with it. And so the actions themselves become very hard. So you want to say something to that, Michael, or here it comes? Go ahead. You have to mute, I think.
Yeah, no, I'm unmuted. Yeah, so, you know, if we were to, you know, Anthony or Hans, if I was to challenge you guys to run out in the street naked like right now, you know, would you do it? Most likely not. And why is that? Because it's not who you are. You're not the kind of guy that's just going to run out in the street naked. Like, you might have to get some serious motivation. You'd have to, you know, do something to make yourself do it, because it's just so far outside of not just your comfort zone, but your very identity. Now, if you're a guy who, like, you're known as the party animal, the one that always gets naked and runs in the street at a party and whatever, and like your identity is built around that, and people see you that way, you know yourself that way, that might be a very fun challenge for you, that you would just strip down immediately and go run and do it, just to get the reaction that you do from people, or to feel how you feel when you do it. So if we can make an identity level shift, or once people make an identity level shift, then the actions just flow naturally. And it's not as simple as saying, okay, I'm a seducer or I identify as a seducer. Let's say it's not that simple. That's kind of more of like it's a little bit more of a left brain approach to doing it. But there are things that you can do. There's a whole host of things you can do to begin to make that shift on an identity level, so that the actions that happen in line with it are a lot easier and it can happen just naturally too.
We talked about several things like the book, for example. But what I did in the past was I studied historical examples of great seducers, both men and women. That I found that very inspiring to do. Also, when I met Zan, who really portrays himself and goes through life as a seducer, I hang around with him, So I completely shifted my life and just hang out and understand that, be in that presence, understand that perspective. What other things are there that a man can do to have an identity shift?
Yeah, that's great. You hang around people who are like how you want to be enough, and you'll just start being like them, right? It'll happen through osmosis. Through hanging out with them, you'll get the reflection that, like, I more and more am one of them. These are my people. This is how we are. You'll start doing what they do. And then what's just constantly reflected back to you is you are like them. And this is a big key right here, because our mind is always looking to tell a story. Our mind is always putting things into narrative form. And on a very subtle level, even without words, like for a narration, you don't need words. So if you watch like a silent movie, there's still a story being told based on where the camera focuses, what's happening in the camera, where it moves next. And this is constantly happening with our mind as well. So let's say you go, and this is relating back to my own personal history here. If you go out to a dance club and no one's dancing on the dance floor, and you think you want to dance and then you're not dancing. You want to dance and then you see that you're not dancing. What's constantly being reflected to you, the longer that you stay on the sidelines, is that you're not someone that does that, or you're a coward, or you're a stiff, or you're this or that. And the longer that you stand there, the harder it is to actually do it, because it's like there's kind of like an identity on a like a long-term level. Like, this is who I am a seducer. But it also happens in the very moment as well, right? Like you ever feel like some days, like your life sucks, you're a failure, you're at this, you're at that. Well, most days you might not feel that way. You might identify as being happy, positive, powerful, whatever. But some days it's just like all of your mind and reality is reflecting back to you that you're a loser, you're this or that. So it's in the immediate term as well. And what I would do, I'll tell you a few of the things that I would do. Is I developed this practice because it was so powerful. I would go out on a Saturday night. This was a time in my life, I was in my early 20s, and I was not drinking, so I wouldn't drink anything. And I would walk into a club, and I would go down to 6th Street in Austin before there was anyone dancing. I would be the first guy on the dance floor, and I would defocus my eyes, so I'm not paying attention to what anyone else is, how they might be looking at me, and which can kind of feed a story that they're looking at you weird. And then maybe I am weird, and then you're looking at yourself, hey, am I weird? And then that feeds that story. So I would not pay attention to them, and I would just focus on expressing myself, having fun, and even being over the top. And if you really get into just 100% enjoying yourself, within a matter of minutes, the dance floor will be full in most places. So I would fill up a dance floor, and I might dance a little bit, with some people there, with some girls there. And then I would go to the next club. Empty dance floor, bam, I'm the first one on. Fill it up, next dance floor, boom, fill it up. You do a few of those, and what's reflected back to you is so powerful. And the rest of the night, whether it's social, dancing, expression, whatever, it's like it's in the bag. That's how everyone is seeing you. That's how you're seeing yourself. And I used this once on a cruise I went on with a girl I was in a long-term relationship with. We went on a cruise to celebrate. We were breaking up. We were going on a cruise to celebrate the amazing years we had together. And I know how powerful this is. Like, if you want the whole cruise to go a certain way, you start it a certain way. And on a cruise, there's no one there, no one knows who you are. It's your chance to reinvent yourself. And so we get on the cruise, and it's not even moving yet, but they're playing music on the top deck. Everyone's on the top deck. They're excited for the cruise. Everyone wants the party to start. So I'm the first one on the dance floor, and I pull my girlfriend out there, and we're really having fun. Next thing you know, the dance floor fills up. That night at dinner, there's a guy that one of the huge ballroom for dinner. That's just huge, amazing food. And there's this guy, I don't know, he was from Egypt or Middle East or somewhere, and he was going around to like sing happy birthday to someone, and he made this. Oh, I remember what it was. Like he would say, "Opa!" It was the cheers or the whatever it was. And I just like joined in with him starting to do this. And then it became a thing. And I was going around with him to the different tables of people who were getting the birthday cake or whatever and doing it. And then at that point, through the rest of the cruise, whenever anyone saw me in the hallway, on the swimming pool, on the deck, on the excursions, they greeted me with like a loud, their eyes lit up, "Opa!" Who I was for them was the party starter. This is who I was. But most days of my life, I'm very serious in the office. I'm up to a very serious mission. I'm focused. I'm not in that Opa space. But it was so powerful. Like even when I would see them and they would see me this way, I would become that guy again in that moment. It was so amazing. So
it makes me think, like, I'm very interested in the power of that creation, because you can shift it in one moment. It continues. You need to have the discipline and cultivate it in a way. But I recall now moments in my life where I became someone completely different. And sometimes it was a choice of me, and sometimes it was an environment that inspired me in a different way. And then I was that guy. Like I remember changing football teams. And I remember this one team where in Brussels somewhere, and they viewed me in a certain way, much more like, way more than before, the sociable and like a leader also, and I became that guy. And it's one of my fondest memories, and I don't know if I started that or they saw me a certain way, and there was a cultivation there, and I was very surprised by the creative power in that. I see, for example, that people see me now as a cyclist or a musician, and I wasn't one years ago, So the power of that is incredible. So imagine, Anthony, that you can also see yourself as a seducer. You see yourself and you say, I am a seducer. Like we say to the world now, I'm an adventurer. I am a traveler. Why do you do that? I'm an adventurer. That changes a lot. If you could see yourself as a seducer, and hence the important issue of trying to hide this or not to people, speaking up or not to people, that identity of a seducer can be very, very powerful.
Yeah, but I would just bring back, like, it's not enough to say am that, because like if there's a lot of people talking about self-talk and things like this. If you say one thing but you're acting differently than that, then all that's reflected back to you is that you're full of shit, So if you want the powerful reflection back to you, you've got to be taking action in line with what you haven't been doing. So there's a barrier. Let's say if we're talking to Anthony, there's a barrier of, maybe it's fear, a barrier of fear from living powerfully out beyond your comfort zone. Like maybe if you draw a circle and that's your comfort zone and you're inside of there, and you might try to go as far as you can go in the direction of being a seducer while staying inside your comfort zone, right? But to live in that other zone, like what if that other zone was where you're comfortable, but that was like where that was doing all the things that seducers do. If you can enough times and over again take those scary actions, how you'll start to see yourself and how everyone else around you start to see you is as that guy. Whether they use that word or not is another thing.
So I'm really curious, like how much, when it comes to identity, how important is that feedback from the world? Because from what it hears, because when you're telling your Opa story, like what solidified that identity was how other people saw you. And I think what I find hard is people don't see you that way right now. And let's say like I want to become a seducer, and I'm going out and I'm talking to all these girls, and like I'm not getting the reception that would solidify that identity of a seducer, that kind of demotivates me in a way, or makes me feel like I'm not there yet, and that I gotta keep working myself so then I can become that identity. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. And I would say that, and you may or may not even identify with that word seducer, right? I would invite you to get a bit creative with it. Like maybe there's an expression of that you can relate to even more, right? Or maybe, for example, if you come to know yourself, like I'm the one who brings joy to everyone, right? I am the guy that gets the party started, right? And then it's like when the party's getting started and everyone's stiff, you're the one that takes it up to the next level, does something that no one else is going to do. Whether that's body shots off of yourself, or whether that's whatever it is, you find something that you want to own and move into, and maybe it's on the path to whatever you view being a seducer as. But yeah, it's what do you hear in that, Anthony?
I think I'm gonna need to marinate on that a little bit, but I think so. I've been starting to take dance classes and like going to bachata nights, at this bar and club down the street, and I talk in every conversation. I bring it up, and when I'm at home, I turn on the music, blast it, and I start dancing to it. And I've only done this for like 3 weeks, but how people see me when I'm talking to them, like they see me, oh, this guy's a dancer, like he dances, and it's not something I consciously chose, but it's something that I just really enjoy, and that I'm starting to embody, and that's what I've noticed. And so and from what you were saying, like I see that currently in my own life when it comes to dance. But when it comes to relationships, it's like a different story. When it comes to interacting with other people, like that's when it gets a little messy for me. But I'm starting to like understand what you guys are both saying.
Yeah, so like as you keep going on that path of being a dancer, doing what they do, feeling how they feel, thinking of what they think about, and everything else, and having that reflected back to you, things like inviting a girl onto the dance floor to come dancing with you, or to learn a new move or something, like all that stuff will start to become just natural, instead of trying to do something that you're not comfortable doing. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
What I love about the identity shift is that it changes your role, or at least in my perspective, it changes your responsibility of constantly keeping doing things and keep doing things and keep doing things. Into it adds a bit of the power of momentum, where you create that identity and the actions that go along with it, and then you have at some point momentum playing for you, and that's a great thing. In my experience, when I changed my academic career and I went full-time traveling with Arja Morata to talk about these things, talk about relationships, talk about love, romance, seduction, I instantly became the seducer. Like from one day to the other, I was no longer the academic, I was no longer the football player, I became a seducer. And it was just incredible how that shifted, and like you talk about dancing, I couldn't stop about talking about my work with people, and it was my most seductive arrow, because that's who I was.
And Hans, you took off to just go with Zan, who's this. That's what he is. He's a seducer. He does it as his career. You're traveling with him. You're doing what he does. You just stepped into a whole other lifestyle. And you wake up in the morning and you're like, oh, I'm in Canada. I'm in Mexico. I'm whatever. What am I doing? I'm seducing women. I'm on this journey, following my heart. Everything that's reflected back to you is that, like, you've embodied it. And you just gave up everything around your own life, around being a philosopher and all of that, social worker, all this stuff. And you just made this leap, and now you're living this other life. So then all of a sudden, everyone knows you as that, yourself as that. And it's a really powerful thing. The same thing could be said about being like a world traveler. If you show up in some African country and you walk into a new village, everyone already knows you're a world traveler. You know what I mean? Just show up there, and people are going to be excited to talk to you. They're going to want to hear about your stories. That's going to be what's reflected back to you. So sometimes just making one really kind of extreme, bold move in your life is enough to really have that identity level shift start to happen.
You want to say something to that, Anthony? Because I sure do.
No, go ahead.
This brings us to the last way of transforming. Is exactly this leap of faith, this going on an adventure. We talked about the left brain kind of approach, where I showed you 8 sticking points and keys, and also your missions, and then the kind of like identity shift, and what that could do, how it could help you doing those missions or showing up in the world, and several ways of making that identity shift. There's also a third, I would say a shortcut almost, and almost no guy that's in the talking to men about getting better with women, understanding women, having success with women, talks about it. And it's insanity, really, because I often ask the guys, why would you spend so much time, energy, money, focus into trying to get better, let's say with American women, and they're great American women, but why would you spend all that time trying to improve yourself so you could be pleasing, attractive, seductive to American women, when there is such a vast world out there filled with beautiful, gorgeous foreign women that are welcoming you as you are right now? You don't need to change anything. You're welcome exactly as you are. So why not consider going on an adventure and at least see once in your life, once a year, this year, at least see a different way of relating, at least feel how it feels when women are welcoming you, when gorgeous women look at you, and just who you are and where you come from, they already want to talk to you. They want to date you. They want to get to know you. So instead of, say, spending money on programs on improving yourself, which is valuable, which is interesting, why not use that money to go on a trip and say, go to Latin America, go to Eastern Europe, go to Africa, go to Southeast Asia, and experience a complete different way. It's a question I ask to you, Anthony, but also to every listener, because I know that nothing, and I've dedicated my life, or at least the last 15 years, to say seduction. Nothing has changed my success with women more than moving, than going to Romania, than going to Kenya, then going to Medellin. Those trips, because they started as trips, those trips had a lot more impact on the way I look at myself, on the way I relate to women, and the way the women see me. So that's a third avenue. That's a shortcut, that very few men really explore.
Yeah, I need to get out of this place.
When you think of foreign lands and foreign beautiful women, I know this is a long-term project, but it is essential to what we're doing and how we're trying to transform guys who are really committed to getting better with women, and you are. When you think of foreign lands and foreign women, what kind of women fascinate you? What kind of women are you thinking about?
Let me see. So big, juicy titties and giant butts.
And giant butts.
Giant butts. Brazil, man.
But seriously, I have no idea. I don't have a lot of experience, so I don't even know what I haven't even touched that part of my imagination yet. So,
well, it would be a combination, Hans, of like where the women also want you, right? Where you really like the women and they really like you. And then if you have both of those, it's even higher level, right? But yeah, that's something. I mean, something great to explore. I mean, if you're curious about that, yeah, let that take you on an adventure.
Yeah, and then I remember Hans brought up the idea of kind of becoming the hunted instead of the hunter. And for white guys, you go to Africa, you go to Thailand, like you are the hot girl, right? Because of your race. But I'm really curious if, because I was talking to a friend who's also like a travels the world, and he's Asian, and he says that Asian guys they're neutral in many different countries. They're not like the hot chick, but they're pretty neutral. So I was wondering like how much, like, is that something you can control? Not control, but like, is there an area in which I guess Asian guys are actually like wanted? Because
Yeah, when you say Asian, what's your ethnicity?
I'm Vietnamese.
Vietnamese. Have you been to Vietnam?
I have not.
I mean, a Vietnamese American in Vietnam, I imagine, would
Oh,
have very high status. Just as an example, right?
yeah.
I mean, very high status. Showing up there and being able to speak perfect English, having been educated in American schools, they're going to automatically assume you got more money. Bam, you're a world traveler. You live in America. You know, that's where all, I mean, Hollywood and everything else, it's all comes from America. I mean, that's the first thought I had when you're asking about that is Vietnam.
I think you're right because I had my friends tell me that like that have visited Vietnam and they're Vietnamese, and a bunch of girls would kind of go up to them and talk to them because they think or imagine that you have a lot of money, and so I see where you're going with that.
And it's not just money, it's status, and they can smell it on you. They can just feel it, and everyone, you know, the girls will see all the other girls looking at you, and that gives you higher status. And you know, the guys there may be looking at you jealously or whatever. Like it, like this. There's a lot of people. This is something that I stand up for because there's a lot of people like, you know, back in the States that they'll be like, oh well, you know, yeah, if you go into a foreign country, women just want you for your money. And maybe, you know, there's some TV shows where guys who have nothing to offer but money are hooked up with girls that have nothing to offer but their looks, and then yeah, you have a relationship that's basically money for the beauty. But there's a, like, if you go to Brazil, for example, and I think this would be another great place, Anthony. If you go, and there's a fair number of Japanese and Asian people in Brazil as well. And Brazil is very like multi racial or colors or what have you. And you can't, it's hard to just look at someone and tell if they're Brazilian or not. That's kind of how diverse it is. But if you go there and you just go into a store or you get on a bus and you say a few words in your native American English accent, you know, the girls are going to start fixing their hair before they even turn around to see who it is. You know what I mean? So it's, yeah, I mean, but what a great exploration. You know, I couldn't tell you because I mean, I've obviously never been Vietnamese, but, you know, but it'd be a great journey to say, I'm going to figure out where I feel the most alive. You know, I just show up and I feel a desire for them. They feel a desire for me. And it just feels, you know, hot. And let me say one more thing about those travels is that be careful, and guys listen to this as well. Be careful just showing up in a tourist zone because a lot of the locals there will have like oh, he's a tourist, like, and they won't even treat you as a real human being, or they won't even look at you necessarily as high status. They might have judgments against you or whatever because so many tourists maybe have treated them wrong, or everything's a financial transaction or what have you. So like, I think the real thing to do is when you go to some of these places, get out of the tourist spots, go and have real connections with real people. And that's what really gets alive.
Yes, take on the identity of a traveler instead of a tourist. But you got your work cut out, don't you, Anthony? I see left brain missions. I see the right brain exploring identity shifts and closely connected to that. You know, what would it look like if you were traveling the world, or where would you go? What kind of women do you like? You know, and really explore that idea and make it Make it something vivid, that it becomes a clear vision.
You know what? I don't even know where I want to go, but I know that because I know you're setting up this new was it a mastermind or like a group of people that travel the world?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yes, I'll say something shortly.
Yeah. You know what? I don't know how I'm gonna do it, but I know it needs to happen. Like, I was feeling so tired today. Even like before this podcast, I was like, okay, let's just do this because I'm exhausted from all midterms. But when you guys brought up traveling and kind of the experience of that, like something in me just like woke up. You know, it just lit up. And so I don't know how I'm gonna do it, but I'm gonna have to make it happen in 2020 for sure. For sure, I'll join one of your trips.
You're already showing up, man. I want to testify to everyone listening. Anthony did a course with me a little while back when he was only 17, and he lied about his age so he could get in. you know, and he's been showing up. He's the one who's making this podcast possible for me. He's the technological know-how, and he's making himself indispensable to me. And in return, I've offered him my mentorship. That's why he's on the call. Also, that's why I'm taking care of my brother. And so that's a way for people to show up. And I want to give the announcement now, but Michael wants to say something. Go ahead, sir.
Yeah, I just want to say that those actions, like, taking the risk of joining the course, even though you were just 17 and you might not be welcome or admitted into it, that's the kind of bold action that can transform your identity of who you are. Like, I'm willing to do anything to get great at being a seducer, right? These kind of things that give a reflection back to you that you're different from the others, you're committed to this path. The same thing as choosing to volunteer to host and organize the podcast with Hans, to going out and then getting on and talking to Hans every week. These are the kind of actions that someone who's committed to this path does. So like you're already well on that path. And there was an invitation I wanted to make to you about, that identity level shift for women. Think about, just as maybe think about this even after the call, like think of like who you could be for those women in California, even the ones who are feminists or who are maybe not sure what they think about all that. I can't tell you how many girls I've met and I've let them know, like, I'm the one to give them the spankings that they deserve. And they just like melt. They love it. They're like, yes, I do need spankings. How did you know? Like there's literally like, it's I've heard so many women say this, that like, they're looking for a guy who will put them in their place, who will guide them, who will discipline them, who will speak up for himself, who whatever. And that the moment that you show up, and the spanking thing for me, it's a very playful thing, but it communicates both that you're really playful and that like you're the one to set them straight. And there's something super attractive about that. So I'm not suggesting that you take that on, but if that lights you up, consider that that's who you can be for them there, and take it on as a badge of honor that you're there to give them the spankings they deserve, or something else that speaks to you. But figure out like who you are for them as a seducer, like that you're going to be the one to take them somewhere that they can't go on their own.
That might be a lot there, Anthony, but I'm sure that we'll have a lot of conversations about this. All I want to know is that you see a next step, and that you commit to taking on a mission or doing something different, going forward in the next couple of weeks, and then next time we can see the growth in that, and we could move on, we can move forward from that. So you have something to work with, Anthony?
Yes, that's a lot to take in. Thank God it's all on recording, so I can just re-listen to this. But very powerful, yeah.
A couple of announcements, very short. Well, the one is that invitation that we have sent out, both Michael and I. We're looking for a posse of 12 men who can join us on our travels this year. You could come as little or often as you want. It will be a mastermind group, so we'll be checking in with each other on a regular basis. We'll offer our mentorship. We'll offer our connections. We'll offer our experiences. We'll offer our time. But there are some requirements too. You have to be a free man, which means you gotta at least determined to become location independent. And it's also you're a leader. It means that you're not. This is not a customer experience. You're invited to hang out with us, but you have to create the success of, or you're equally responsible for the success of that experience as we are. So if you're interested in that, go and look for that invitation on my wall, on the newsletter, on Michael Skye's. And if you read it and you're interested, send us a message, and then we'll give you the details from there. Just say, yeehaw, I'm interested, and then we'll give you the details. This is the first time we do that, and we're super excited to travel and share that way with a worldwide kind of mastermind group who's getting last minute invitations all over the world and shares these experiences, the challenges about women, but also broader, physical challenges, entrepreneurship challenges, and just very general challenges on how to become a greater man. You want to say something to that, Michael?
Your microphone keeps rubbing on your shirt. Yeah, no, I would just say, Hans and I have been doing this for 10 years. For 9 years, we each did it, without each other. I met Hans about 15 months ago. We've traveled 5 continents together. And we just get up to a lot of great things, a lot of mischief. There's tons of laughter. We're very much students of life and of leadership and entrepreneurship and women. And we're just hungry for aliveness and for it all. And we're going, we don't need 12 men to come with us, but we're organized in a posse. And if there are 12 guys out there, or if there's 1 or 2 or whatever, we're just inviting them to step forward out of the wilderness and come mount their horse or jump on the plane or whatever you got to travel on, a boat, whatever. And
jump on your horse and then on the plane. But yeah, so reach out for that. Oh, one more thing for people listening to this, and I'll write the code in the comment section as well. If you went through the first part when we did the 8 points, and you're assessing yourself, I'm going to start a mastermind online group in the new year, but a very advanced one, which means we start with topic number 6, 7, 8, and so you gotta be able to say yes to the first 5, which leaves you 2 months to take care of those first couple of missions: their preparation, their desire, their presence, their invitations. I'm forgetting one. Anyway, preparations. I don't think I said this one. Anyway, there are 5 missions. If you want, you have 2 months to tackle those missions, and then you will be invited into the mastermind group. For the people listening to this podcast, you can go to my website, find the course, the Way of a Seducer course, find part 1, you get part 0 for free, and it's usually $97. You get 50% off if you use this code, mastermind preparation. So I'll put it in the comment section too. If you're ready for that, go ahead and do that, and then you may be invited after the new year to join our mastermind group. All right, Michael Skye, thank you very much for being here. Anthony, thank you very much. Anyone who has any last words? Perfect.
I'll just say, yeah, Anthony, I honor you for the steps you're taking, man. You set yourself on a course for a shit ton of adventure, man, and keep walking this path, man. Keep hunting this knowledge and the next level, because man, there's some amazing experiences awaiting you.
Thank you. I mean, I'm super pumped up and excited right now. I'll see you on the other side, in the other side of the world. I'll get my ass there. Give me a few months.
All right, awesome. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much. This was the Seduction Show with your host Hans Comijn, episode 2. See you next time, 2 weeks from now.